Well, good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Council of the Municipality of North Perth held on Monday, February 3rd, 2020. I'm Mayor Todd Kasenberg and I'll call this meeting to order. I ask the Deputy Clerk to note our starting time for the minutes as 7:01 p.m. I invite all to rise for the playing of O Canada. Today's meeting is being streamed live on the Municipality of North Perth YouTube channel and will be available there after the meeting as an archived video. To those present in the gallery today, by attending a public meeting of the Council, you are consenting to your image, voice, and comments being recorded. Anyone who is invited to speak will be recorded, and their voice, image, and comments will form part of the live stream and the archived stream. The chair and/or the clerk have the discretion and authority at any time to direct the termination or interruption of live streaming. Such direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances where deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory, or potentially inappropriate to be published. Attendees are advised that they may be subject to legal action if their actions result in inappropriate and/or unacceptable behavior and/or comments. Thank you. This community succeeds and flourishes when its people make their contributions. Those making important contributions include councillors at this table who will listen to and deliberate on the matters on our proposed agenda. This council has been well supported as well by staff of North Perth who provide service and reports to this council and to our community, and those who have business with or interest in the work of this council. I appreciate all of you being here and your service. I invite your decorum over the course of the coming meeting. Since our work requires concentration, procedures issued by Council requires all but councillors and specific media to turn off electronic communication devices at this time, and even then to respect focused use for our meeting. Use of cameras or audio devices during or to record this meeting is not permitted. Let us move then to item 2.1 on our agenda pertaining to pecuniary interest. For the benefit of those unfamiliar with our council practices, provincial legislation requires councillors with a potential pecuniary or financial interest in any item at the council table to declare this interest and to remove her or himself from discussions and voting on the item. In accordance with recommended protocol at this time, I invite all councillors with pecuniary interest, including those who have declared in writing, to verbally advise the chair in public session and to submit documentation to this effect in writing to the clerk. Councillors are further reminded that should a potential conflict arise during the meeting, they may so declare and act at any point in the meeting. Councillors, what say you? Anyone with a potential pecuniary interest this evening? Seeing none, that brings us to item 2.2 on our agenda. I have a motion before me for the adoption of tonight's meeting agenda that reads as follows: that the agenda for tonight's meeting be approved. Can I invite over? Deputy Mayor Kelvin, thank you, and seconded by Councillor Behrens. Thank you. Any discussion or debate on this? Seeing none, let's have that vote. I'm missing someone. Terry, am I missing you? Terry says he's in favor, so that is carried. Thank you. That brings us to item 3 on our agenda, the so-called consent agenda. These items are placed on our agenda because they are believed to be non-contentious, yet they require council's approval or receipt. Grouping them expedites our business. However, any councillor wishing to extract an item from the consent agenda for discussion, debate, and individual action may do so. Tonight, there are 8 items on our consent agenda, including the minutes of the last regular council meeting. Councillors, do any of you have a desire to extract any of these items for further discussion or action? Councillor Anstett.
Item 3.5.
Item 3.5. Thank you. This is a note from the City of Sarnia.
Correct.
Okay.
So just maybe a procedural thing, but I'm not sure if everybody was aware, on Friday there was a vote held by the Saugeen Ojibwe First Nation saying that they would not support the deep geological repository being built on their land. So on this correspondence from the City of Sarnia, they're saying built in the Bruce Peninsula, which would be their land. So I'm almost wondering if it's a timing thing and it's not really necessary.
Okay. Do we have opinion from the clerk's table about this? Anything? Staff have anything to comment on this? CO Snell?
Certainly I can.
Which number are you? 11, huh?
Certainly I can confirm what Councillor heard about the vote held by the Aboriginal groups along the lakeshore, and I guess this resolution was passed long prior to the vote, so it may just be a timing issue.
Okay. So is there an action that we should take? Should we not receive this item? Go ahead.
Certainly we can receive it. It certainly will just be entered in for our records, and I think the larger question is, I still believe that the possibility that the South Bruce application still may be proceeding, which is different than the Bruce Peninsula project. So we may be hearing more, because I understand that's the next sort of evolution of the is to have information sent to local municipalities.
Okay.
And I was, thank you, through you, Mayor Kasenberg, that was just my concern, is that they are 2 separate projects. So the Deep Geological Repository is an Ontario Power Generation project, and the NWMO is the one that's being proposed in South Bruce. So I just didn't want them to be any confusion. So.
Okay. So you're satisfied that it's
yeah, no,
receipt of this report is not contraindicated at this point?
Yeah, like I said, I figured it was just a timing issue because it was held on January 20th and the vote was until the 31st of January. So.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Rothwell.
Thanks very much, Mr. Mayor. And I just want to point out item 3.8, and specifically the Western Ontario Wardens Caucus update. And when we were at Roma in January, Chris Snell and I, there may have been others from North Perth that weren't there when we were attending the Regional Transportation Plan. The Minister of Transportation had set up information session in that respect, and I'll just encourage all members of council and perhaps the public, if they're listening in, about the draft transportation plan for southwestern Ontario. Again, this is basically utilizing our existing network of roads, rails, buses, etc., to better enable our transportation of people and commodities throughout. So I just encourage everyone to look at that piece and take action on that input, specifically regarding the transportation plan. And the last thing I want to raise is, of course, I believe our mayor is on the SWIFT team, and certainly the announcement that was made is close by. It's not in our area, but nevertheless, I think there could be those in our listening area that are going to benefit from the SWIFT program. And this is a crucial issue in rural Ontario to see the matter move forward. So we'll just encourage anyone and everyone, if they're not aware of what SWIFT is, perhaps to contact our mayor and certainly encourage the province. We certainly at Roma did hear about the general support of the province, continued support for the province and the federal government on the SWIFT program. So I just want to highlight those two issues in particular. Thank you.
Thanks. It's actually quite nice to have the cat out of the bag on the SWIFT announcements. I have to admit, the cone of silence was remarkable. Councillor Andreessen.
Mayor Kasenberg, if I could just have one small procedural thing around our information packages, both on the website and in our council package on eScribe, the links don't work. So when I was trying to look up information on SWIFT, so if you click on like the blue link to go to SWIFT and see what the money was spent or who received that money, they don't work. And so I'm just wondering, I believe it's because it's PDF. And so when we go into PDF, you can't have links that take you on, they can't be live. So I'm just wondering if that's something we should be looking at, both for the public and for our own benefit.
Absolutely. Clerk Bearfelds, did you have any comment to make about this to your awareness?
Process would be when COS now receives this email, I think he should just forward to you as it is. In the particular format that it came in, I had to actually print it off and scan it in and give it to you. So going forward, I think that will be your process. You'll find it in an email.
Yeah.
That's great.
Thank you.
I've taken note of that a few times where things have been scanned and you lose all of that interactivity that was in the original document. So it is, I'm glad you've raised that with us, Councillor Andreessen. Councillor Johnston.
Just a quick question about 3.3, the land division one. I'm glad to see the Lutnegger one is down in size. I don't know if Matt or Chris can answer. Just a quick question about number 9 on the Lutnegger one about the new public road access. There's no drawing. How close to the intersection is it being moved?
Councillor Duncan, do you have anything on this?
I know we discussed it here. Julie brought it up, so I didn't know where it's moved to.
There was some discussion with the applicant at Land Division. They were going to keep it as close to the original access as they could.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further on the consent agenda? This was a lively consent agenda. How exciting. Okay, I have a resolution for our consideration. That consent items 3.1 to 3.8 be received for information and the minutes of the January 27th, 2020 regular council meeting be adopted. Can I invite a mover? Councillor Rothwell, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Johnston. Any further discussion or debate on this one? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Are we having some display concerns? I can see that it's carried, but it's not showing up there. Okay, well, that will bring us to agenda item number 4, and we'll see whether the clerk's table sorts it out. They looked there's a little stress on the faces over there. Let's have agenda item 4. This is our opportunity to have delegations, and we have one delegation tonight. My pleasure to introduce Lois McLaughlin, Chair of the Perth Adult Life Care Residents Committee. That's a long one. To the podium. She'll speak to a proposed budget for the committee, which is mandated to support the supervision of the Perth Meadows Housing Complex. Welcome, Lois.
Good evening, Mayor Kassenberg and members of Council. As Chair of the Perth Adult Life Care Residents Committee, I am here to present an overview of 2019 and the proposed 2020 budget for Perth Meadows. 2019 was a very successful year for the Perth Meadows Complex development. The Perth Meadows Suites complex is now completely occupied. Of the 36 units, 31 have life lease occupants and 5 are rental units. At the end of the year, the operations had a surplus of $154,802.38, which has been allocated towards the reserve deficit. In addition to regular maintenance, we were able to update a number of flower beds and shrubbery, create storage space under one of the stairwells in the suites, and freshen the paint in the common room. 2020 budget looks like another good year for Perth Meadows. We continue to have a number of inquiries for both the townhome and garden suites units, so feel that we will be able to maintain full occupancy going forward. The 2020 budget does include a 2% increase in the monthly occupancy and rental fees for all units. It is felt this is in keeping with inflation. The total estimated operating expense and revenues are $629,156, which is less than 1% over last year's actual. Revenues were 8.7% over last year's budget as a result of full occupancy of the suites. The kitchen floor attached to the common room area has been difficult to clean, so this year we will be replacing this floor as part of operations. The garage doors, seals, and openers for the townhomes need to be repaired, and this will be completed this winter/spring, weather permitting, as part of operations. During the year, we will be getting pricing to repair or replace the 18 driveways into each of the townhome units. This project will be brought back to Council for approval once the costing and financing is arranged. As well, as Council only appointed one council member to the Perth Adult Life Care Resident Committee after the last election, we are requesting that this position be fulfilled by an additional community member to serve on the committee. That concludes my presentation. Does have any questions? I will try to answer them for you.
Thank you, Lois. Councillors, any questions for Lois on her report on the status of things at Perth Meadows? Councillor Andreessen.
I have a question actually for Ms. Hale, if that's okay. Just wondering, what's the total debt of this project? Because we are applying the surplus to the debt, but what would be the total debt for it at the moment, I guess?
When we apply the 154 less, right now the suites are still carrying a loan of $920,000, so that would be the 150 off of that.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Further questions, councillors, for this report? Councillor Johnston.
Lois, just about the council appointee, do we normally appoint 2? Is that?
In the original bylaw, it says there was 2 council members and 4 community members.
Okay.
A question further to that for the clerk then, if the bylaw itself, if there's a bylaw that stipulates 2 council members, then we would need a bylaw amendment to change our composition if we intended a permanent change, and probably even for a temporary adjustment, we would need to consider a bylaw revision. Is that right?
Ag Committee, as well as we need other appointments within the municipality. So there will be 2 upcoming bylaw amendments if you wish to proceed.
Okay, very good. All right, further questions at this point in time, councillors? Okay, so I have 2 items of business pursuant to this matter that we can consider at this point. The first is a resolution that reads as follows: that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth receive and approve the 2020 budget as presented by the Perth Adult Life Care Residence Committee for the operation of the Perth Meadows development, totaling $629,156, and further that a 2% increase in life lease and rental monthly rates be approved to be effective June 1st, 2020. Can I invite a mover for that? Councillor Richardson, seconded by Councillor Seiler. Thank you. Discussion or debate? Seeing no indication of that, let's have that vote. So that is carried. Thank you.
I have a different screen that keeps coming up to vote, but we'll see. We'll try it again.
Okay. Some technical challenges. And then pursuant to the request from the delegation regarding change in the composition of the Perth Adult Life Care Residence Committee, I have a resolution for us to consider, which, as I understand from the comments of the clerk, will be followed in a future meeting with a bylaw revision to further this up, should council so feel so inclined. So I have a resolution for our consideration that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth approve an additional community member position on the Perth Adult Life Care Residence Committee and remove the second member of council, and further that the clerk may advertise for the position on the committee and prepare the amending bylaw. Can I invite a mover for that? Councillor Duncan, thank you, and seconded by Councillor Seiler. Any discussion or debate? Councillor Rothwell.
Thanks very much. Again, not being here when this was first established, the rationale for having two councillors on there, I presume, has the basis would be that the municipality is directly involved in terms of the ownership piece of this. Is that right?
Affirmative,
On,
yes.
on that basis, I'm concerned if we're going to take one member of council off there, is that if we're truly the owners, that we should probably have a full voice as opposed to having only one of the voices that the original bylaw had. So I'm not going to be in favor of the resolution.
Okay, thank you. Further comments, discussion, or debate? Councillor Johnston.
Why do we only have one? Nobody else wanted to sit on it, or?
Yes, go ahead.
If I recollect, at the time that we were moving forward with placing members of North Perth Council on committees in December of 2018, the mayor, the CAO, and I sat together along with the Deputy Mayor, Doug Kellum, going through your list and divvying up the boards and committees and making sure that everyone had two, and due to the number of councillors that we needed, a decision was made amongst the four of us, I think, that we just chose at that time to go forth with putting one councillor on the slate.
Councillor Seiler?
I guess I can speak to it. Julie and I did sit on this board together for I don't know how many years, but it got to the point that one counselor there is sufficient enough to. One counselor, I think, is efficient enough to make the decisions accurately, and we just felt that a community member. We did change. We did have a person from the suites and a person from the townhouses, but it got to the point where these people were being bothered by residents, and they didn't want to do it anymore. So we can't get a member from the suites or the apartments, because they're always, if they walk out in the street, so anyhow, I feel that if we get one more community member, I said there's a council member, and one's efficient enough, because I do have Mrs. Hale, and we have, I think that's enough for us to, we have Lois as a chair, and it's working out good that way. We've been doing it now for over a year, and you look at our budget, this place is running good. So I think that probably, I have no problem with this.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Seiler. Councillor Barnes?
Yes, Councillor Seiler is correct. I did sit on that board for 4 years, and I would agree that we don't need two members of council on the board. The budget is before you. They operate under a budget, just no different than anybody else. So if you want to do your due diligence, take a look at the budget and study it. I do believe that a community-minded person would be a great asset to the board. The board, I believe, still meets, or it did when I was there, Tuesday mornings, and that's probably why so many had the inability to attend the board meeting for council. So I would support the community member.
Okay, thank you. Any other councillor want to be heard on this one at this point in time? All right, this has been duly moved and seconded, so let's have the vote. And that is carried. Thank you. That brings us to item 5 on our agenda. We have no reports from the following departments at our meeting tonight, from the CAO's department, from the clerk's department, and from recreation. That brings us to item 5.4. For item 5.4.1, council is to receive a report from the finance department pertaining to a deferral schedule for 2019 for development charges. And it looks like Ms. Hale is prepared to speak to that. So welcome to our treasurer and director of finance, Fran Hale.
Thank you, Mayor Kaysenberg and members of council. The report is simply to provide council with information with regard to the deferrals that were completed during 2019. And we already have one in 2020 already. And as you know, one of the ones from 2019 was extended into 2020. So at this point in time, this is just for council information.
Thank you, Ms. Hale. Councillors, any questions on this report? Seeing no indication of same, I have a resolution for our consideration that reads as follows: that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth receive the Development Charges 2019 deferral schedule for information. Can I invite a mover? Deputy Mayor Kellum, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Duncan. Any discussion or debate? Seeing no indication of same, let's have that vote. And that is carried as well. Thank you. We have no reports tonight indicated from our Manager of Operations, our Manager of Environmental Services, and our Fire Chief. That brings us to item 6 on our agenda. For item 6.1, councillors, are there any reports you would like to ask of staff or our committees? Seeing no indication of that, we have received no items of correspondence beyond that already shared in the consent agenda for council's disposition. So we move from item 7 to item 8. At item 8, which allows council to consider and enact bylaws, we have no bylaw proposals before us tonight beyond those that aren't already addressed in other ways on our agenda. That brings us to item 9 on our agenda. Are there any notices of motion from councillors attending this evening? Seeing no indication of that, that brings us to item 10 on our agenda. For item 10.1, are there any announcements that would be of benefit to our community or that reflect well on North Perth at this time? Councillor Seiler.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. I just wanted to bring up for our next budget meeting is on the 12th, the Wednesday, and then we don't have a budget meeting until 4 weeks after that. I know that there's going to be a couple absent on February. Now, I'm not looking at everybody's schedule. Would it be possible if we could do something between the 12th and the 11th of March? Just bring it forth. If we can accommodate it, I'd appreciate it. If not, that's fine too.
Councillors, we have received a request from Councillor Seiler to consider a change in the timing of the next meeting of the Budget Committee. He has proposed that we move it from the date that was picked, which was February 12th. I would propose the 19th as our starting place and see where that takes us. Is anyone unavoidably committed on the 19th? Okay. Okay, so Deputy Mayor will be away. Anyone else? Okay, let's look at the week following, the 26th. So Councillor Johnston will be away. There's a risk that I'll be away that evening as well. Did we want to take this further? The 4th of March. So we'd have 2 back-to-back. That's interesting. March 4th, anyone? Okay, so Councillor Andreessen is a no for that night. Anyone else? An absolute no? Okay, so they'll find a way, is what we're told. So we're going to disappoint someone. Could I ask the treasurer if she'd offer comment? Is the staff finding it difficult to bring to council? It's what is needed? Okay. Would another night of the week be more suited? Okay, so Tuesday the 18th. Okay, so we're starting to bump into a range of committee meetings, which are, I think, common enough on Tuesdays. Tuesday the 25th, anyone? So yes, Councillor Johnston will be out. I might be out that night too. It's hard to say. Deputy Mayor, if we chose the 19th, will you be crushed and disappointed? Okay. So what if we move it 1 week to the 19th? Can that work for the rest of council? Okay. So let's set it for the 19th. I think that's it's a storm date anyway, right? So that's fine. Okay. By general consensus then, is the 19th okay?
So moving the 12th to the 19th?
Yes. Okay. Anything else in terms of announcements that would be of benefit to the community at this time? Councillor Anstead.
Thanks, Mayor Kasenberg, through you. So there was an email sent today just reminding the RAC committee members of the Atwood Lions rink opening this Saturday, February 8th. So it'd be great to see councillors out at that. There's going to be a ceremonial puck drop. There's going to be a ribbon cutting, and I think there's going to be some refreshments as well. So it's a great project that we want to show our support for. So I think it begins at 11 o'clock. 11. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Anstead. I'm looking forward to that myself. Any further announcements? I'll draw to Council's attention that County Council this Thursday has a significant matter before it with regards to annexation of lands by the City of Stratford. And so those of you who are interested are certainly welcome to attend that meeting should you wish to observe the proceedings of that occasion. That brings us to item 11 on our agenda. We have matters before us to be considered in a closed session of council, and I'm going to switch the source here and read the resolution that both explains and enables our action to enter into closed session. That this committee proceed in camera at 7:32 p.m. To address a matter pertaining to 1, a proposed or pending acquisition sale of land for municipal or local board purpose regarding A, property described as Park Lots 3, 5, A and B, Plan 290 North Perth, and B, Lots 2, 3, and 4, Plan 382 North Perth. Can I invite a mover for this? Councillor Richardson, thank you, and seconded by Councillor Seiler. Any discussion or debate on our intention here? Seeing none, let's have the vote. And that is carried. Councillors, we will recess to the adjacent chamber, and I will turn off all the appropriate AV, but leave the live feed video, at least, stream intact. Okay, councillors, we're back in session. Thank you for your participation in the closed meeting. At this point, under item 12 of our agenda, there is no reporting out from our meeting at this point in time, but it will follow in due course. Council, as a mandated good practice, acts near the end of its meeting agenda to confirm all of its actions and business of its meeting through what is called the confirmatory bylaw. I have a draft for a confirmatory bylaw number 20-2020. My goodness, palindromes, which reads as follows. That bylaw number 20-2020, being a bylaw to confirm generally previous actions of the Council of the Municipality of North Perth, be introduced, read and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Can I invite a mover for that? Councillor Duncan, thank you, and seconded by Councillor Andreessen. Any discussion or debate? We're not doing electronic vote, or are we? We have no electronic vote. Okay, all those in favor? And that is unanimously carried. And councillors, that means we've completed the deliberations and taken action on the business that has come before us tonight. Before I read a motion to adjourn, is there any other business that we should be considering? Seeing no indication of same, I have a resolution for adjournment that reads as follows, that the council meeting adjourns at 8:19 p.m. to meet again for general council business on Monday, February 10th, 2020 at 7 p.m. Can I invite a mover? Councillor Behrens, thank you, and seconded by Councillor Anstedt. All those in favor? And that is carried. This council will meet again in regular council meeting on Monday, February 10th, 2020. This meeting is adjourned.